Welcome back to the latest edition of Until Saturday. I'm Ari Wasserman, joined by David Ubben, and we have a very special guest. Boss Man is here. Can I call you that, Stew Mandel? Boss Man?
No, let's not do that. I mean, I'm nobody's boss on here.
I mean, I am afraid of you though, so that you still always have that. Last time Stuart and I were together, we both played blackjack in Vegas, and we both had $250 and lost 8 hands in a row each, and then we're done. So hopefully
that
the
was
show goes a little bit better.
Media Day, though, right? Yeah, that was
Pac-12 championship game.
I did very well when I was there in July for Media Day. I got in, got out, took my money, used it to upgrade my Taylor Swift seats. You know?
Oh, wow. So you must have done really well.
I did pretty well in a short amount of time, yeah. I
don't even want to know how much it costs to upgrade your Taylor Swift seats, but I hope you had a good time, and I hope you did one of these when you were there. You know, you really got into it. We've got a really big show for you guys today because we have a game that I think that the entire country is on the edge of their seat to see in the Michigan-Penn State game.
Are we starting with Iowa-Rutgers?
Nebraska-Maryland?
I'm excited to watch all of them because that's who I am. But let me formally introduce everybody and welcome you to Until Saturday's Week 11 pick show. Again, we have that Michigan game. We have Nebraska-Maryland, and we'll get a little bit into the Michigan controversy again until this finally resolve itself in 2028. We'll talk about it. Can Lane Kiffin take down the Death Star and USC's game without Alex Grinch? First game without him, I should say. Be sure to follow the podcast on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast and drop us a 5-star review if you'd be so kind. Subscribe to the Until Saturday feed on YouTube. If you're here live joining us, we appreciate it. We go live 4 times a week right now. Thursday for the pick show, Saturday reaction after the games are over, Sunday sound off, and Nicole Auerbach and Chris Vanini on Tuesdays for playoff reaction. If you're here live watching the show on YouTube and you want to be in your car, working out, pumping iron or something, and you just want to listen to the audio form, be sure to subscribe to the podcast feed. The link to both feeds can be found in whatever show's description you're listening to. Also, be sure to leave a voicemail on the Until Saturday phone line at 316-462-9852. Again, that is 316-462-9852. You can also text that number, but we will certainly favor the voicemails because we'd like to hear what you have to say. Comments, questions, concerns, angry, happy, sad, anything you have to say, get off your chest. We want to hear it, and we'll play it on the show. Lastly, subscribe to the Until Saturday newsletter, where you get your daily fill of college football news right to your inbox. That link is also in both shows' descriptions, and you do not have to be signed up for The Athletic to receive that newsletter, though if you're not, I don't know what you're doing with your life. That's it. I did good. Let's go through the picks now. How about that?
I've always been curious, though, with the Sunday sound off. You know, it's not exactly an easy phone number to remember. So, do people, like they're listening, they're like, oh, I got to enter that thing into my contacts in case I want to
tweet it out on
Saturday
nights because the Saturday night calls are the best ones.
Or do they have it on a little piece of paper, like next to on their nightstand or something before I go to bed?
There are people who have been calling in from the stadium. So I don't know what they're doing.
They programmed it. Yeah.
Worst hat I've worn in a while. This is a retro Suns hat. Watch your mouth, Daniel. Okay.
Tom Chambers original.
So we have a lot of picks. We're going to do 10. We've got the superlatives at the end of the show. It's a very important week in college football, not just because of the off-the-field discussions that we've continually had to have, but also just games. And listen, guys, the playoff starts now. Huh? The playoff starts now, Dave.
Sure.
For who?
For everyone. It's the sport.
All right, we don't have time for this on the
It's
pick
the
show,
sport. When you lose, there are consequences. It's great, and then cherish it because it's the last full month of regular season football where that is the case. Why don't we start off with the biggest game of the week? Michigan 9-0, 6-0 in the Big Ten, -4.5 on the road at Penn State, which is 8-1 and 5-1 in the Big Ten. Their only loss came to Ohio State in a somewhat close on the scoreboard game in Columbus, Ohio. We are recording this on Thursday around noon, so if news breaks about Jim Harbaugh or anything else happens in the scandal, which is probably guaranteed because every day we figure out Connor's. I mean, he might have another side hustle. Vacuums now. I don't know, something later.
I love it.
Listen, too, like, I don't know why people are making fun of him. Like, that seems like a very tenuous side hustle. Like if
Except that
you
it didn't sound like he was very good at it based on.
No, did you see like some of the awful Amazon reviews he gets? I mean,
our podcast gets some similar reviews, but we try harder at least.
Apparently, he's a much better sign stealer than he is, vacuum. It's not even the like he sells cameras and stuff on refurbished. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody does certain things on the side to make a little extra money, I think. But like, if you aren't good at vacuums, then why would you choose that? It sounds awful.
Maybe he just loved dust. I don't know.
It's weird. Like, it's probably some kind of dust.
If I was drawing up maybe the funniest side quest of this entire saga, it's hard to beat poor vacuum repairman. That's unbelievable.
Poor vacuum repairman lining him up in his $500,000 front yard. It's incredible. I love
getting every all the key details that it got him sued by his HOA. Like you can't.
Yeah.
They're like,
Also, I got a question for you, Stu.
Also, if you were going to get your vacuum repaired, why would you want it exposed to the elements?
That's also true. I want to know if this makes me that guy. Because
it probably does.
Probably. I live in a subdivision currently under the thumb of an HOA, but I feel like if a house in my neighborhood had 30 vacuum cleaners on the front porch, I would probably alert the HOA. Does that make me that guy? Am I bad for this?
Yeah, I mean that's literally the purpose of them. So probably I'm not going to come.
Well, the purpose of HOA is to protect your home value, and I feel like 30.
And if somebody has an open house and you drive by somebody who's got Sears out of business, third floor on their front lawn,
For me, it comes down to two things. One, the number of vacuums, where he clearly has passed that. When you get past about 3, for me, it becomes a lot. And 2, the length.
Two's okay.
Well, in terms of just sitting on your porch. And for me, the length of time, if we get past a week and you got more than 3 vacuum cleaners sitting on your front porch, I'm going to have to reach out to somebody. If that makes me that guy, so be it.
No. If it's a one-time thing, sure. Like, that's a legit complaint. But you don't want to be that guy who calls the HOA every time, like, there's a car that's been parked in front of my house for too long. Or
yeah, I don't care about that.
Somebody hasn't
cleaners,
they didn't take their garbage can back in within 24 hours. You don't want to be that guy.
The only thing that, and Sam Kahn brought it up, that I keep thinking about whenever we talk about Sam Kahn here in the comments, vacuum repair cleaners gives off strong Breaking Bad vibes. The vacuum repair business was to help people who were wanted by the police disappear.
I will say though, not to open ourselves up to a libel suit, but now we have a pretty compelling answer to the question of how he was funding the tickets.
I don't know. Is vacuum cleaning that lucrative?
Well,
I mean, it might be.
It can be if you do it right.
I don't know about you guys. I have one of those little Dysons, not a sponsor. Wish they were. Thing really, really rips, and it's got some good suction, and it's a good vacuum. It's very small.
Look, if I need my vacuum repaired, I know this. I'm taking it to a store with a storefront, not somebody's house in the suburbs.
No, I'm going to say this, and maybe I'm that guy, okay? Because like anybody who listens to the show knows that I have no technical ability to do anything with my hands at all. But a vacuum is not expensive.
Exactly.
To even go through a repair process. Just
you can get a pretty nice vacuum for like $150. It probably gives you like a few years of good work. If it starts breaking down at some point, I'm going to pat it on the back. Send it to the big vacuum cleaner in the sky and say, thank you for your service.
Thank you I'm going to get a new one.
How do you guys ever do the picks on this podcast? Like,
I don't know.
Do you ever actually get to them?
The one thing I will say about the Michigan scandal, and like I'm Mr. Ohio State Homer, I've gotten to the point where I don't care at all about what they did and all about learning more about this guy. Like that's where I'm at in the whole thing. I want them to play their games. I don't want anybody to get suspended. They're one of the most compelling stories in the sport this year. And I think just like watching this game this week of like how much of the signs help and everybody's going to be like locked in. Like, I think that's great. It's an entertainment product. We can, do the in-depth murder investigation at the end of the year. But for now, just let them play and see how it plays out. So that's
as we go into the Penn State game. Can I posit my idea for the punishment that now has been muddled?
They have to spend 2 days at the State College Airport.
No, I've never been there. But my thought was it's an unorthodox crime. We have no precedent for this. So let's get unorthodox with the punishment. My idea was Michigan. What?
He doesn't even know what it is yet.
I was thinking of unorthodox punishments in my head. I don't want to tell you where it went.
All right. Anyway, Michigan, as their punishment, should be required the rest of the season to give all of their opponents all of their signs and let them know what play they were running. If it didn't matter that they had it, then it shouldn't matter. And if it did, well, that's your penance. You've got to overcome what lots of other teams have overcome. Now, with all the news this week that apparently we had other teams in the Big 12 passing along Michigan signs, it gets a little muddled. And I don't know. Like early on,
they're doing a good job.
Process,
they're doing a good job with the lawyers to really muddle the thing up.
Well, early on in the process, it seemed to me that it was clear that they had gained a competitive advantage. Now I am less certain, and that's really all I care about. Like, yes, they broke a rule, but all I care about is did it impact the games, and I'm really not sure.
I mean,
Stuart,
the thing, our friend Andy Staples, former Ari co-host, made a great point on Twitter. It's not that I can't imagine, like, if you're not a Michigan or Ohio State fan with a big, skin in the game, I can't imagine you're like that worked up about what they did, like in terms of the seriousness of it. It's more the brazenness and the sloppiness, and that like Connor Stallions knew full well, right? Like this is not allowed, and and yet like plowed ahead, and the spreadsheet and the recruiting people all over the country. It's just like the brazenness of it. Like there's no in the Central Michigan sideline. Like this is no like, oh, I misread the rules. Like everybody knows you can't do that.
Well, here's my take on the whole matter is, and I've spoken to a few coordinators on the phone in the last few weeks about this. I'm sure you guys have too, but it isn't so much about cheating. It isn't even so much about what advantage they got. I think it is a coach's honor among thieves code that they just crossed the line.
Right.
And I think that people have lost respect for him, Jim Harbaugh and his staff, because of that. And, that quick Walters handshake after the game, I think that's going to be a pretty typical thing because people just don't like him anymore. And if you go too far, everybody knows cheating happens. Everybody knows you bump into a recruit in a high school, or you eat a cheeseburger with him when you're not supposed to, or even give gas money on an unofficial visit. This stuff occurs all the time everywhere. What doesn't occur is the brazen, to borrow Stew's word, act of going as far as they did to cheat. It's almost like we're all cheaters, but there's certain places you just don't go, and then they went there. And I think it's offensive to everybody else in the profession, which I think makes it a very interesting situation. But here is my hottest take. And you guys tell me if you think this is it, and then we'll pick the games. I think Michigan has already paid the ultimate punishment. And the ultimate punishment is you are no different than everybody else. You don't get to stand on your perch anymore. You don't get to act like you do things the right way. You don't get to look down at everybody and say Michigan is superior to everybody else who puts football first and academics and all that discussion. Watching everything that's unfolded, the way that the fans have reacted to what's unfolded, I feel like is punishment enough for the people who have walked around acting as if Michigan's football program is morally superior to their peers. And then we can just move on and play football.
Postseason ban is the ultimate punishment, right?
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, like, I don't ever feel like I'm ever going to see, like, I feel like Michigan fans have acted the same way an Alabama fan would in the same scenario, or an LSU fan, or an Ohio State fan. They're all the same. You're not better than anyone else. Your program is doing what it can to win games, and everybody is playing this weird, crazy sport together, and Michigan isn't levitating above the rest of us. And then that, I think, that realization and revelation is a big hit to the ego of certain Michigan people. So I think that if we bring them back down, then everybody is on the same playing field. Is that crazy?
No.
Okay. What about the game?
I know I've gotten a lot of journalism lectures in the last couple of weeks from people who, about your guys are reporting rumors as fact and anonymous source this and anonymous source that. And I always say, like, I'm sure you were holding the same scrutiny and high standards to all of the reporting about the Zach Smith situation at Ohio State, right? Or the Mel Tucker, story earlier. Like, I'm sure all the Michigan fans were like, whoa, let's wait for all the facts to come out. Like this.
But I will say this, though, too. Yeah. Michigan men or Michigan women, however you want to phrase it, are doing a pretty awesome job of changing the narrative and flipping the script with the lawyers and the lawsuit threats and all the things that, smart people do in order to weasel out of a scenario. Because I feel like now we're talking about, did Purdue steal signs? Did they share signs? Who else is doing this? Be careful. It was like a Walter White, another Breaking Bad reference of like, tread lightly because you don't know how prevalent this is and you don't want to set a precedent. All these things, I think they've done a very smart job of making people forget that they were basically caught red-handed doing what they were doing.
I don't know if they've actually accomplished that, but they're trying hard to.
I mean, I feel like the narrative
muddy the waters, right?
I feel like they have muddied the waters quite a bit and have turned what seemed to be a fairly straightforward discussion about what occurred and what they did into a complex issue about morality, how prevalent it is, and whether or not they should be punished. I think that's kind of like a discussion point now. So anyway, Stuart, we're 15 minutes into this. I love your face. What do you think of this? What do you think of this game on the field?
Well, Michigan's the better team, and I don't trust James Franklin in these big game situations. The only thing is, you just don't know. Like, we don't know all this controversy that we're talking about, how it's affected the locker room, how it's affected the coaches' meetings. If Michigan were to go out and lay an egg, I'm sure that will be the first talking point. But in terms of what we know of them on the football field, I just feel like Michigan's a much more complete team on both sides, on all three phases. And so if you're asked, am I supposed to just say if I'm picking them to cover? Because yes, I am.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. I just don't know how Penn State scores in this game. Ari, I'm open to hearing the case for how how Penn State is going to put points on the board in this ball game.
This line is weird.
It is weird. I don't disagree with you.
It's a weird line. If you would have closed your eye, if I would have asked you last Saturday night before the lines came out, what should the line be in this game? Wouldn't it have been like 7?
Around 7, I would have thought.
4.5 is bizarre.
There is home field advantage. I mean, it's a really, it's going to be a raucous atmosphere there. So obviously that plays into the line. I just think that, the Penn State team that played at Ohio State and could barely move the ball, you're going against as good, if not better, defense in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the play here personally is the under, but I'm taking Michigan. Again, I just think it comes down to Michigan's a better team with a better quarterback. And they're a lot like Ohio State, but they have a better quarterback than Ohio State. Maybe not better weapons, but they do have weapons. And I think this is going to be a low scoring game, but it feels like a 20-10 situation for Michigan.
Okay, I can't name a single identifying reason for football-only reasons to pick Penn State in this game. That said, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here because the line, I almost made Penn State my lock of the week because I'm so offended by how small the line is. And then I changed it because I didn't want to be ridiculed and called a homer again. But is it possible that Michigan locker room is going through turmoil? They actually caught quite a bit of an advantage from having signs, and they don't have them anymore. They're going on the road. This is like a huge legacy game, potentially, again, for James Franklin. Penn State is the hardest place in the Big Ten to play when it's rocking. Michigan hasn't played against a competitive team since last January, and we are just overvaluing how great Michigan is. I'm not saying that they're not a national championship contender. I'm not saying they're not a team that's going to ultimately beat Ohio State and make the playoff. But close games happen, guys. They happen all the time. And when you say, where are the touchdowns going to come from? I can't sit here and look you in the eyes and say, well, Drew Aller is going to throw for 300 yards. I can't pick out Dante Cephas is going to have as a rival game. But in my experience, and I've had some pretty bad ones, looking at lines like this and saying, well, one team is much better than the other. Why the hell is the line so small? I can't figure out. I'm going to hammer the side. Losing those bets happens frequently.
Vegas always knows. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
But Ari, the betting, we still have, last I checked, 45% of the money on Penn State. So it's pretty even. If it was like, I would be with you, Ari. If it was like 88, 90% of the money was on Michigan, I'd probably say, I'm going to go Penn State.
A lot here. We'll see what the line closes at.
Yeah, we will.
But I'm not going to make it my lock of the week. But I am going to pick Penn State plus 4.5. And that doesn't mean that Michigan won't win by 3.
What if it moves like 5.5?
Dude, your final score was 20-10.
Yeah.
What if it's 20-10 with 2.5 minutes left, and Penn State scores their junk touchdown that they scored against Ohio State. Like, that's how it happens, dude. It happens all the time.
What if Blake Corum, who had to spend this week on the phone with his lawyers trying to figure out why he's got an incorporated business, comes out and fumbles because he's so, he's been so rattled by all
fumbled the snap, fumbled kickoff, awful roughing the passer penalties. This is the reason why we cover the sport is because it is the epitome of grab ass. So I don't need to give you an offensive script of how Penn State's going to do it. But buddy, I covered an Ohio State Penn State game where they took a field goal, or they went to the locker rooms and came out before halftime and kicked the field goal again, and then went back to the locker rooms. And then the 3 points that they got before halftime was the difference in the spread. Like, stuff happens like this. It's just a weird sport.
It is.
I have some advice for Penn State, by the way.
I've got one last thing I want to tell you though before you
go ahead.
Our breakdown of the entire game against Ohio State was, well, if Ohio State didn't have Marvin Harrison, then Penn State probably would have won, right? Like, that was the discourse. Guess who doesn't have Marvin Harrison?
It wasn't quite that simple, but all right.
I'm just saying, if you take Marvin Harrison out of the game plan for the Ohio State-Penn State game, that game turns into a Penn State mucked-up game. It's close. It may turn into a Big Ten battle. Like, what if this game just looks like a Big Ten West game?
I've got it 21-16.
Take the under. Take the under. That's my advice.
21-16. I'm taking the points.
Can I just ask you guys a quick question? Is this podcast a 2-hour show? Because if so, I'm going to have to.
We're going to go. What do you got going on today? What are you doing?
We speed it up toward the end. Usually the last 4 picks end up being the reason speed round.
We go really heavy on the big games, and then when we get to BYU-Iowa State, I think we can just
go lightning round. I got it.
Yeah.
I think my only advice for Penn State, I think producer Cam has it. I will coach for my advice for Penn State on how to score some points. Cam is disappointed me. That's all right.
He has another call. He's on another call. Our producer was supposed to play sound and he didn't, but that's okay. It's okay.
We still love him.
Why don't you tell people what it was supposed to be?
It was supposed to be our beloved James Franklin screaming at practice, "Chuck it deep!"
Just chuck it deep. There he is. Deep. It's saying. I'm just saying it doesn't.
They do that in practice, but they don't do it in the games.
Didn't they do it last week? We're back. And Cam, our producer, who's in his meeting still and still found a way to get the sound going.
That's called team player right there.
I think that this might be one of the most highly anticipated games of the season. I don't know. I'm very excited. Like, I want to see angry Michigan. I want to see them on the road. I want to see no Connor Stallions on the sideline. My favorite thing about the defensive letter that they sent back was that their margin of victory went from 34 to 38 after they didn't have Stallions on the sideline. It's like, you played Purdue. You played Purdue. They're playing their first good team since January 1st, or was it December 31st? And I'm excited to see them operate. And listen, if Michigan comes out and wins 49-10, which I think is certainly on the table too, probably won't happen. But if it does, then we can, have that discussion about another national championship contender and all those things. So we will certainly track that game and talk a lot about it on Saturday night in the live reaction show. Yeah. Another big game on the best coast, the West Coast, where Stew dwells. We have Oregon and USC. Oregon is laying 15.5 points, and they are 4-1 against USC in their last 5 meetings. And this is the first game without Alex Grinch. Is USC dead, or can they put a little fight up in this game? Stu, we'll start with you since this is your expertise.
Yeah, it's my lock of the week, Oregon. I don't think, I understand why they fired Alex Grinch. Maybe they should have done it a long time ago. But the idea that, like, okay, now that they've done that, like, the defense will be great. No, I mean, I don't see that being fixed overnight. And Oregon, you saw what Washington did. Washington was not a good running team all season, and they, ran for an insane amount of yards on USC. So they can't stop anything. And Oregon's good in all phases. I mean, I know that came up in the playoff show this week. Who would they beat and blah, 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 blah. Well, they've been dominant. Look what they did in that game at Utah. So, yes, I don't think it'll be pretty. I even question if USC has mailed it in at this point. Like, okay, we're not going to be playing for a Pac-12 championship this year. What do we got to play for?
Yeah, I'm with you, Stu. I think in general, Oregon's a complete team to me. They do a lot of things really, really well. It's like, okay, they might not have UCLA's defense, but they're really good on defense. They might not have the same offensive line as like Oregon State, but their offensive line is really good. They might not have the same explosiveness as Washington, but they're really good through the air. They do everything well. And USC, we've talked about Art. What does USC do well besides provide highlight reel opportunities for Caleb Williams?
I don't think they do anything particularly well besides that.
Yeah. Let's not shortchange Caleb Williams. He does a lot of things.
No. I'm saying,
but he can't do it himself. Yeah.
They let him.
I actually feel like you could make the case.
Plays.
Like if Caleb Williams would have beaten Washington last week, I would have put him back on my Heisman ballot. Like to do, and so the question, I'm on Oregon State minus 15.5 too. Question though, is it possible that this game is just a rehash or a rerun of last week's Washington game?
No. Oregon's defense.
No, because I think Oregon's got a better defense.
Yeah.
But we watched the Oregon-Washington game, and there were some moments there where I was like,
Yeah.
When you're playing a really good offense.
I also think Bucky Irving's better than Dylan Johnson is.
Yeah.
He definitely is.
Well, I mean, if they don't touch the running back till he has 199 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know that the quality of running back has anything to do with it. I don't know.
So sometimes early in the season, quarterbacks have these like insane numbers and it just hasn't normalized yet. But Bo Nix has played 9 games at this point, and he's completing 78% of his passes. And it's not like he's in one of these offenses where they just throw a bunch of screens. Like he goes downfield to Troy Franklin all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's just
was Troy Franklin a highly rated player when he was a recruit?
He was. He's actually from my somewhat backyard in Menlo Park.
He was like a fringe 5-star guy, but my whole life goal is to be a California resident with you, Stu. You got to help me out here.
Yeah, you've talked about that, but you don't want to be in my part. You're all about Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, but
you want to be.
I want to be a drive away from you.
Okay, it's a long drive, but sure.
Yeah, I'll make it. I'll make the drive. There's casinos on the way, right? Bakersfield gets lit. So I'm on Oregon as well. I don't really see, unless there's a dead cat bounce, how USC is even moderately motivated to
keep an eye on the under there. Also, it's not going to be a track meet.
Yeah, over under 73.5. That's quite a bit. So
yeah,
if you think USC's packed it in and Oregon's defense is much better than Washington's, you might make a case for that.
I'm going to disagree because I think Oregon might score close to 73.5 on its own.
Well, then you might.
Do you think that Oregon's offense is better than Washington's?
I mean, I watched them play against each other, and Washington scored more points, so it's hard to say that. It's more that Washington hasn't played that well since that game, right? Yeah. Like Washington, as of that moment, looked unstoppable. Michael Penix and his receivers unstoppable. And it just hasn't been the case in the weeks since then. So, and Oregon since that game has gotten better. So,
third game of the week, guys. We're going to move on to Georgia, 9-0, 6-0 in the SEC, laying 10.5 points against Ole Miss, who is 8-1, 5-1, over under 58.5. And this is the beginning of how the SEC gets 2 teams into the CFP this year.
Are you not introducing them as national champion Georgia? What happened there?
Wait, is Ole Miss the second team in this scenario?
Well, I'm saying like Georgia's going to rack up, like going to have a top 10 win against Ole Miss, and then Ole Miss is going to win out. Mizzou's going to win out.
Oh, I see.
And like Georgia's going to have a resume, and then Alabama is going to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, get into the playoff, and Georgia's going to have a good enough resume to sneak in at number 4.
Maybe.
And then the final 4 teams are going to be one Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia again, or Michigan, one of the 2.
So what do you do with Florida State?
Just leaving Florida State off to the roadside.
Ari's trying to get Seminole FSU Twitter fired up at us.
Or maybe it'll be the one-loss Pac-12 champion that's left out for Florida State if they finish the year unbeaten.
Maybe.
But I was having this debate on Tuesday because we don't get to have the show. But Alabama, Georgia, both finishing now with 1 loss at the end of the year is a very scary proposition for the Pac-12, in my opinion, especially if the Pac-12 champion is a one-loss team. So
I think the one that should be not nervous, but I don't think Florida State can lose a game and make the playoff, right?
That's right. That's right. I agree with you.
The LSU game is not turning out to be as huge a win as it seemed at the time.
Clemson,
Louisville has moved up pretty high, so that would be a good win if they get to AC. But like if you lose to Miami this week or you lose to Florida, like you're going to lose some serious traction. Whereas I think if Washington loses a game in the next couple of weeks, but then turns around and wins the Pac-12 championship, like they're going to have many top 25 wins.
But the battle between undefeated Florida State ACC champion goes to Florida State if they're being compared to a one-loss Pac-12 champion.
If it's undefeated, they're getting in
100% of the time. So that is, hey, Dave, every single game Florida State plays for the rest of the year is a playoff game. How about that?
Ari, I don't want to get too far down this road, but as you know, there's starting to be this debate. In fact, I had it with Bruce to me, it's like a no-brainer, right? If Alabama and Texas are fighting for the 4th spot, of course you're going to give it to Texas. But he's like, I don't know.
Are you sure about that?
They're going to have just beaten Georgia. They're going to have a much better resume. Well, let's say that happens. Then your whole argument goes to bunk. Like, then the Alabama-Texas game didn't matter. They won the game.
It's true, Ari.
There are certainly exceptions to it didn't matter. Yeah.
You know where there's not exceptions are in the bracket. Or if you make a bracket and you make them play, they don't say, well, we get.
You don't think there will be exceptions to teams that make the 12? You don't think there will be? You don't think there will be exceptions for teams who make the 12-team playoff in the regular season?
During the regular
won't
season,
matter the way that we thought they were.
They're not going to win a game and then be like, well, I know you won a game, but your success rate was a lot lower, so we're actually going to advance the team that scored.
No, I know they're going to do that for everybody going into it, and then we'll have a bracket. Yeah, the same way that the current playoff exists, except it's not watered down with bad teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the thing on this Georgia-Ole Miss game, Ari.
Yeah.
Oh, right. We forgot to pick the game.
Ole Miss is a much better running team than Missouri is, and they have a much more talented running back in Quinshon Judkins. And Georgia has struggled to stop the run, and Kirby Smart after the game basically saying that Georgia got whipped at the line of scrimmage, even though they knew what was coming half the time. I mean, Missouri just ran stretch, and then they ran stretch, and then they ran stretch, and Cody Schrader kept getting 6, 10, 5, 6 yards. Georgia usually does well against this type of offense, but I think Ole Miss being able to run the ball, they're 30 spots higher in yards per carry than Missouri. We've already discussed Georgia. They are not the run defense that they have been in previous years. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis are not walking through that door. Nazir Stackhouse is a good player, but he's not quite to the level of those guys. Ole Miss can run the ball well enough to keep it here. I think Georgia, in part thanks to Ari, is overvalued by our nation. And Ole Miss keeps this close, and I think has a chance to win.
You think I'm a lines maker? You think that Ole Miss has a chance to win this game?
Yes, Ari, they do. But did we not go through this last week, Ari? You said you were killing me all week. The idea that Missouri can be competitive in this game is so comically ridiculous, and I'm like, I think they were. They
did not have a chance to win at any point in the fourth quarter of that game. At a certain point, Georgia turned
they had the ball down 6.
Was that in the fourth quarter?
Yes.
Missouri put up a tough fight. I gained a lot of respect for Missouri.
Yeah,
I never thought they were actually going to win.
Well, when they had the ball down 6 on that one drive, when then the turnover happened, once the turnover happened, it was over. But I thought that was at the end of the third quarter.
No, it was
if
early
it was in the fourth quarter, then valiant effort. But the thing that I want to ask you guys is that we pound James Franklin into the dust about winning and competing and showing up in big games. And the question that I have for you, and I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, probably should have looked them up, but I feel like every time Ole Miss is a one-loss team or an undefeated team and they go in to play a big game, they just get completely boat raced. Yeah, and I don't know, when's the last time Ole Miss actually showed up in a big way in a big game? Last year they played Alabama and when they came in as a one-loss team in November 12th, which is, I think, to the year, and they lost 30-24. So they play, or that was 2022. So that was last year. Then 2023, they played Bama and only scored 10 points. And I love Quinshon Judkins. I think the guy's an animal. But what in Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss repertoire makes you think that all of a sudden they're going to beat this team?
Because Alabama's defense is better than Georgia's, Ari. Maybe significantly better. And Ole Miss is going to be able to run the ball in this game.
My hot take is I think Missouri's a better team than Ole Miss, despite what the rankings say. I don't have much confidence in – it's not – you make a good point about Lane's record, but beyond that, I don't think Jackson Dart – I think he's been I don't know. Jackson, if you look at Jackson Dart, kind of like his game log, he does not play well in these road games. He's kind of all over the map. So I think Georgia will get after him. I see Georgia winning more comfortably than they did against Missouri.
Yeah, I'm in lay the points mode here. I don't know that I particularly love it. I just don't know. Like, Ole Miss has such a fun and exciting offense, and I think they're pretty versatile. And I just would love to see that offense that we get to see every other week of the SEC schedule show up when they're playing a championship contender. And that just doesn't ever seem to be the case. So we'll see. But if Georgia wins this game, that gives them a top 10 win going into next week. I think that probably puts them ahead of Ohio State. I thought they should have been ahead of Ohio State last week. And then opens the door potentially to a very serious, interesting game in Atlanta, which we left for dead a few weeks ago and now is right back where we typically see it. Okay, game 4. We were just talking about it. Florida State, 9-0, 7-0 in the ACC, laying 14.5 points at home against Miami, who is 6-3 and 2-3 in the ACC. Florida State has won back-to-back games in the series, but is 2-3 in the last 5. But question marks about Miami's quarterback and TVD. Emory Williams could start I love Florida State just in general, but does Miami have any sort of life to make this an interesting game?
Ari, do you remember what you were doing on October 14th?
Was that a Saturday?
It was a Saturday. Well, I can tell you that Tyler Van Dyke threw 4 touchdown passes on that day.
Who were they playing?
I believe they were playing NC State. No, playing North Carolina. They lost. But he has not thrown a touchdown pass since that day. It has been a while, almost a month. I don't know what's going on with Tyler Van Dyke. The more you look at it, the more confusing that 2021 run that he was on gets. As long as Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are healthy, and that seems to be a rather iffy proposition, I have a hard time believing Florida State's not just going to run away with this. Miami is in a bad place right now.
Miami's been kind of like hanging on for dear life, I feel like, since that kneel down game. They just haven't been very good. I mean, everybody got their hopes up after the Texas A&M game in week 2, and they haven't looked like that since. So I think it's trending, from what I understand, it's trending toward Keon Coleman being healthy. I don't know about Johnny Wilson. Give me Florida State.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if their 2 best players on the outside aren't playing, then do we get into a game of football where they're in an offensive funk for the entire first half like they were last week? Like, that's the one thing, too. It's like I get a little bit nervous when teams, really good players, don't play. Yeah. But I don't see anything here that makes me feel like Miami has a pulse enough to win that game. So
they might be in an offensive funk, but Miami will be in an offensive funk the entire game unless we see something,
no matter who's available.
Something that we haven't seen since week 2. 6 points against NC State, right?
The A&M game gets wilder. Like, the more, like, we don't have time to get into A&M, but
you guys watched the Pitt game last week, right? You watched it, right? Okay.
Yeah, but
that's out there. I'm just saying that's not like a fantasy. That happened 6 days ago, and I watched it with my own 2 eyes, and it was like really, really bad. So I'm not saying that they're going to play really, really bad again, but it's certainly a possibility. But I think that Florida State I don't think that Florida State's going to lose this year, to be honest. North Alabama might give them some trouble, but other than that, it doesn't look like Florida has a pulse, and these are the 2 rivalry games in 3 weeks. I don't know. I think that Florida State's in pretty good shape right now. Yeah. Next up on the docket, another Stew special. Washington, undefeated, 9-0, laying 9.5 points.
Anything that happens in the Pac-12 is a Stew special.
You're up. It's like 8 p.m. while everybody else is falling asleep for you. You're out there just, in the wonderful state of California. The sun is shining. The birds are chirping. Everybody's just having a good time, and you're out there watching the games. You know what's up in the Pac-12.
I know what's up in the Pac-12, except for if it happens on the Pac-12 network.
It doesn't matter if you live in California.
Bit of a disadvantage there.
The Bermuda Triangle of college sports.
I did have Pac-12 network for years when I had cable, but I don't have cable anymore. This game, Which Washington are we going to get? Are we going to get Washington that was so dominant for the first half of the season and, pulled out a huge win against Oregon? Are we going to get Washington that had laid an egg at home against Arizona State, pulled it out, gave up a ton of yards and points to Stanford for no apparent reason? Obviously, big road win last week against USC, but they did give up 42. So I'm taking them to win, but I'm taking Utah to cover.
Yeah,
which Utah are we going to get?
Well, I think it's matchup based for Utah, right? If they're going to go up against teams that can be as physical as they can be and also be explosive, that's tough for them. I don't know that Washington is going to be able to match their physicality at the line of scrimmage. And if Arizona State and Stanford can slow down Washington, I feel like Utah can as well, enough to muddy this game up and keep it close. I think Washington makes enough plays to win, but I'll take Utah.
I think that the notion here is that Utah's a really good team. They play really tough, and they just scored like a bajillion points against Arizona State last week, and their only 2 losses are against really good teams, and Washington has to show up eventually, and I think that Washington will probably lose a game before the season's over. I just don't think that the defense that I saw last week against USC is a sustainable thing, but I don't know that it's going to be against Utah at home. I have Oregon State the following week circled. I think that Washington is going to cover this game. I think that everybody's going to be all over Utah, and I think a 10-point win here is certainly in the cards, and if they can get back to being who they are, they're a much better football team than Utah, and I think they can, to some extent, match the physicality much better than USC could, for that matter. So
I think it's going to be about the start. If Washington gets up 14-0 in this game, it's going to be a bloodbath. If Washington gets down 10-0, it's going to be a fist fight for 6.
It is important to mention 2 things. One, Utah is 7th in stop rate, if you read Max Olson's story, which is the best defense statistically that Washington has faced all year. And Penix might be playing for the Heisman right now. So there's a few things to consider. And I think it's an interesting battle. And somebody said this week's games stink, and I don't know who said it, but you're wrong. We're going through the list here, and we got some good games this week.
Some good games.
There's like 4 games that are good, and then everything else stinks. I'm looking at this list here, and I'm having a good time.
No college football Saturday stinks, right?
Yeah. I know, I agree.
Even the Saturdays where you look at it, like next weekend, next weekend is the week where all the SEC teams play their FCS games. So you look at the schedule, and you're like, it's not really many good games. But that'll be the week that like half the top 10 gets upset, right? Like,
yes. Well, I mean, it is interesting because I don't know if this is just in my mind or if it's true, but for November 9th, mid-November, we are in a position where there are a lot of teams that are still alive for the playoff that like usually aren't alive in years past. And all 5 Power 5 conferences have a representative that's still technically alive to make it. And if these losses don't start happening soon, like we're going to be in a pickle at the end of the year. It's going to be a glorious seasoned pickle, but it's going to be a good one. And I know we never get
a 12-team playoff, huh?
Yeah, be perfect time to let everyone.
I think it's destiny. The last year of the 14 playoff cannot go off clean. Like it's going to be some.
The committee's had an easy job, like
most years,
8 or 9 out of 10 years.
Do you want to know what would get me off of the 4-team debate and you win? If a season actually ended and an undefeated team or a 1-loss conference champion that is very good gets left out.
Well, one-loss conference champion has been left out before.
Is it a group? Which one?
Do you not care about UCF?
How can you be an
Which one, Stu?
How can you be an Ohio State homer and not remember when 12-1 Ohio State that lost 49-20 to Purdue missed the playoff?
Did they won the Big Ten that year?
They were 12-1 Big Ten champion. There was, I don't even remember there being any debate about it though. It was like, oh yeah, they lost by that much to Purdue. They shouldn't make the playoff.
Yeah. I think that maybe I should just like say, when I say a 1-loss conference champion, like we're talking about like a Texas team that lost on the last drive to Oklahoma or another team that.
No, I think that's
like a viable candidate. No, I'm not talking about a team that got their ass kicked by Purdue in the middle of the year.
There will be upsets, but I see somebody like that getting left out. I mean, there'll be an argument
UCF, Ari.
If Ohio
I don't want to have the UCF discussion with you right now.
If Ohio State goes 11-0 and loses to Michigan, there's going to be people.
Then they're out.
That,
They should be out. That's a playoff game, and they lost.
It'll
They're out.
be controversial, right? There'll be people like, well, that's still a better resume than Team Z, Florida State.
But like, here's what I'll say: if the end of the year happens and Oregon is a one-loss Pac-12 champ, Florida State's an undefeated ACC champ, Texas wins the Big 12 as a one-loss Big 12 champ, you've got Georgia or Alabama as an SEC champ, and then whoever wins the Big 10, that would be an absolute disaster. I don't think that we've ever finished a season, even if it has technically happened, where there have been 5 legitimate viable candidates, or 6 even, to actually get in. Like, I don't even remember Ohio State being left out because it was just.
The
like,
messiest year was the first year, the TCU Baylor year versus Ohio State. Yeah. There's been a few controversies since then, but in most of those cases, I was like, I don't like, remember Penn State, 2-loss champ, but they beat Ohio State and Ohio State got in instead. I didn't think that was.
I know people like to do the UCF bang the drum on that, and that's fine. And I know that there's the Big 12 in the 2014 season where we didn't know what to do with Baylor and TCU, but there hasn't been a year where a team has been left out and it really stung that they're not a part of it. Like every year, I think they've gotten it right. So, I know that.
Dave
is just clamoring to get UCF in so we can have a 49-10 win.
I'm morally opposed to the idea that you can win all your games and not get to play for a national championship. That is so antithetical.
Have we ever gotten actual chaos, though?
What do you mean?
Like chaos at the end of the year. Everybody has their chaos. If these 5 teams are undefeated conference champions, what do you do? Like a chaos.
No.
Or the committees
I'm just talking about the fact
that could happen this year.
That could happen this year. We've already mentioned a couple of scenarios, like Georgia 12-0 and loses in the championship game and gets left out would be insanely controversial. If Texas and Alabama are both in the running and they take Alabama, it will be hugely controversial.
Mm-hmm. So I guess
remember, there will be upsets down the stretch.
Yes.
I don't know what Catherine's saying about last year. I don't know what point she's saying, but last year they couldn't find 4 teams to get in, so they backfilled it with 2 that didn't deserve it, and then 1 ended up going to the national championship game. Okay, next game.
I don't have time for Ari right now.
They couldn't find 4.
Let's keep it moving.
They couldn't find 4 last year. So
they found 4. It's all right.
They did. They found them. They found them. Sure did. Every other year, TCU loses the Big 12 champion, and they're out. Every other year.
One time, Ari.
Alabama, 8-1, 6-0. Dave's darling, laying 10.5 on the road at Kentucky. Over-under is 46.5. Alabama's on a 7-game series win streak. The last time they won, Dave was in middle school in 1997. Milroe, in his last 5 games, 267 total yards per game, 14 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he is morphing into the unicorn that he is. Is Alabama back, baby?
They've gotten a lot better. I think we can agree on that. And I don't actually think Kentucky is very good, but you could see where the circumstances are there for a trap game kind of thing where Alabama doesn't come out strong. And so I can't see them. I mean, anything's possible. It's hard for me to see them losing to Kentucky, but I could definitely see Kentucky staying within 10.5.
Yeah, this is a tough game because I think there's like a 42-13 Alabama out there.
There sure
is. I'm like,
there sure is, pal.
But I kind of think maybe people are overreacting a little bit to Alabama just based on the last couple of weeks and some of the conversation around Alabama this week. I think that's happening. Kentucky's a good team. I'm worried about them being able to score. They look good one week. Devin Leary's been really up and down. Ray Davis has looked, unbelievable one week and then slows down the other. And Alabama's defense is good enough to slow him down. Alabama on the short list of best defenses in the country. So, but you're going on the road in the SEC, 10 points. I'm going to lean Kentucky here, and I reserve the right to say I told you so to myself when I remember that I told you that 42-13 was on the table.
I'm gonna just scoop it up. I'm gonna. Is this a buffet? Can I scoop what's on the table and put it on my plate? I'm just gonna. I don't have anything else to say. Go ahead. The Stu, did you pick? You said you think it could be within 10.5.
I picked Kentucky to cover. Although as more you guys talk about it, the more I'm regretting that. But it's already up on the Athletic. Hey, David, you mentioned. Remember, you said like Tyler Van Dyke's 2021 is starting to look more and more. Where did that come from? What about Devin Leary? Wasn't he an all ACC kind of quarterback that year, and then Kentucky was obviously thrilled that he transferred there.
Can he stay one more year? I'd be curious if a second year with Liam Cohen does anything, because you're transitioning. He's got weapons. He's got a running game. It's been odd that he's the piece that hasn't really clicked for Kentucky this year, because the receivers have been really good. Dane Key, Berrien Brown, Tavion Robbins. They've had some pieces around him, but he's had some pretty bad games, and this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough.
Next.
Stew's in a hurry. What do you got? Do you have a lunch date or something? What's going on with you?
It's not lunchtime yet out here.
Yeah, I forgot. It's 6 a.m. there. Okay. Next game is Tennessee. Dave's a homer for the team that he covered at Mizzou, the team that he went to. I don't know which side you're homering on.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
This is the Dave Bowl. If you cover a beat and you get compensated to write about that team for a publication, you automatically are in love with that team.
Pretty much.
Did you know that?
That's usually how it goes.
Except among the fan base of that team, where they're like,
where they hate you.
Yeah, they hate you. You never write anything nice about us, etc.
I did get hit. A bunch of Bama fans. I got the Tennessee homer stuff a lot in this offseason when I was like, hey guys, are we sure Bama's good? Bama's probably going to lose 3 games. It's a lot of Tennessee homerism. I do still live here. I lived in Columbia for 4 years, so it was good times. Ultimately, this is a tough one because these two teams are really interesting, and Missouri is really explosive. Tennessee is not very explosive. For me, I think in general, going on the road in the SEC is tough. Tennessee has looked pretty shaky in some spots. Tennessee, that offense has demolished Missouri the last couple of years, put 60 on them, but all the guys that were putting 60 on them are not going to be suiting up in this game, and that lack of explosiveness, I think, we'll struggle. Tennessee can slow down Missouri's running game, but I'm not sure they can slow down the receivers on the outside. We'll see if Luther Burden's healthy, but I'm going to go Mizzou here in a really close one. I think the line's right, the number's right. It's just one of those games somebody's got to win. I think Missouri gets it just being at home.
I was a little surprised to see Tennessee as a favorite, other than there's some uncertainty about Luther Burden, which would obviously be a huge loss for Mizzou. But I don't know. I'm fully on the Mizzou bandwagon. I think they're really good. That offense obviously is really good. It's interesting just looking at the screen right now and seeing number 13 Tennessee 7-2, because they don't feel like it. Doesn't it feel like
it doesn't? It doesn't even feel like they've played games this year.
Yeah,
I don't even know.
Neither one of these teams has a win that makes you want to just be like, oh, okay. They just keep winning games and beating teams are supposed to.
I'm not trying to be mean, Dave, but I can't even remember a Tennessee game this year.
They went and won at Kentucky, but I don't think that's as.
Yeah, they whooped Kentucky. They got their butts kicked by Tennessee.
Oh, I remember the Florida game.
Or by Florida.
Yeah, I remember
but they played it. All right, they had Bama down double digits at half, just like everybody else does, and then coughed up. They got outscored 27-0 in the second half.
Did LSU have them down double digits at half last weekend?
Tennessee has not played LSU.
Maybe it's unfair. Maybe I'm measuring them against last year's team that was really good before Hendon Hooker got hurt, obviously. But yeah, I think I'm not sure they're the number 13 team in the country. If they go on the road and beat this Mizzou team, I'll reconsider.
Yeah.
You ever read a romance book where where the husband and the wife have been married for 72 years, and then the husband dies when he's 96, and the wife is still alive, and then a week later she dies of a broken heart. And it's
I'm so confused right now.
Where is this going?
I'm just wondering if Mizzou is going to be dead because of a broken heart. It's like they had it running, they had it rolling. They really, there was a chance that they could have won.
Yeah,
and
they were pretty frustrated. I mean, I think having Georgia, we can't say on the ropes, but having a shot to knock Georgia off 2 years
kind of on the ropes. They landed some punches, more punches than I thought they were going to land. Coming home now, there are 2 lost. Legitimately, we're maybe a quarter away from Mizzou being the number 1 team.
Yeah. I need to. All right. By the way, I need to drop in the chat the screenshot of the text message that you sent me in the first half of Mizzou Georgia. I was wrong. And then today I bring up the idea that Ole Miss can be competitive, and you act like I'm insane.
I don't think you're insane for them. I mean, they're a top 10 team. I was more certain that Georgia would run Mizzou out of the building than I am about this one. But
Romance novel set in Vegas. I love it.
Yeah, that was our story, Stu.
Most romantic
then we
city
got
in the
our
world.
we got our heart broken at the blackjack table. But
They do have
I
Eiffel Towers in Vegas, right? So it's all good.
Just gonna let that sit there for a minute. Okay, Tennessee is my play in this game. I just think that first of all, I think it's weird that they're favored. Second of all, I am very curious what a 4-quarter game plan with Mizzou looks like if Luther Burden isn't 100% himself, and it just kind of seems like a weird spot for me. So also it's on Paramount Plus, so if you want to stay, there's a doubleheader with a Christmas romance movie that comes on right after it's over. All right, we're gonna go into the speed round now. Nebraska plus 2.5 at home against Maryland, 5-4.
How do Maryland and Nebraska have the same record? I can't. I'm looking at it.
Nebraska can get bowl eligible for the first time since 2016 when they played Tennessee in the Music City Bowl. Mike Loxley is 4-12 in November and December games.
Did you see the stat yesterday about Mike Loxley against ranked Big Ten teams? He's like, I hate to not have the exact stat in front of you. It was like 0-33. There was definitely at the front of it.
Yeah,
Nebraska's not ranked
this year. Yeah. No, they're not ranked, but like I really had high hopes. I thought Maryland would have more of a breakthrough this year.
Have you ever watched a Maryland football season before? It's every year 5-0, 6. You know that like you're on a roller coaster. Click, click, 1-0. Click, click, 2-0. Click, click, 3-0. Click, click, 4-0. Then you get to like click, 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 5-0, 6-0. Then you're dead.
Here comes the rest of the division.
Yeah. And then it's always like Michigan or Ohio State in week 6, and then it's just like done. I don't know.
It's not even that.
It's under, right? You know, this could be like this will be a Big Ten West kind of game, right? Like it could be like
I don't know.
Guys,
I think it's pretty good. At the end of the day, Maryland at some point doesn't the slide have to stop? I mean, they're
with a brick wall at the end of it.
This is a 5-0 team that has lost now.
Every Maryland team was a 5-0 team.
Yeah, but
Maryland. All you need to know about Maryland is they went to Northwestern, and Northwestern's quarterback hasn't done anything all year before or after, and he lit up Maryland's defense.
I'm wondering about the give up factor here a little bit too.
Yeah.
When they lose to Northwestern and then they go. My lock of the week is Nebraska. I think that they're feeling good about themselves. I think they're a somewhat competent team. They're at home, bowl eligibility for the first time since prom for me. And there's a chance here that Nebraska can have a fun little end of the season. And like Maryland, I don't even know how they're just not on life support.
They seem to be crossing each other on the axis.
Right? Yeah,
it's not a good sign.
You know, like that scene in Wedding Crashers when he goes and sees Will Ferrell at the end, and he goes, "I'm crashing funerals now. I'm crashing funerals." Girls are super into it, and then he goes, "Well, what happened? How'd this guy die?" Yeah, he's a hang gliding accident. I'm hang gliding. Oh, I'm dead. And like that's Maryland football, and I'm crashing their funeral right now.
What a deep cut. Deep
I guess I'm the only person who paid attention to the Michigan State game last week, so I'm gonna go Maryland here reluctantly.
Let's do an actual bet, me and you, with money or whatever. How about this? If I win, you just have to have the normal meal for dinner on Saturday.
Ari, I eat many normal meals every week.
Yeah.
Stu, can you weigh in on the?
Hey,
raw
what
meat
were your? No, forget the raw meat. What were your dinners this week? All of them. Just going back to Monday. This is how you find out, Stu. You have to ask him general questions, and then he says something that's crazy, and he doesn't know it's crazy. Okay.
We just did meatloaf and sweet potatoes. It's very normal this week.
How was the raw meat
5 days
when you brought home the raw meat? Like
it was fine because I know how to cook it in a skillet. It was good. Is this an insane thing to do, or is this just smart?
I'm not, I don't recommend handling raw meat if you don't have to, but
it's red meat though, so it's not like you have the salmonella risk.
True.
What? Yeah.
All right, you're trying to derail the lightning round, aren't you?
Maybe.
Stu's got to go. He's got to go. He's got a lunch date.
I just realized I'm starting to talk like I'm being held hostage. I am enjoying it.
Okay, yeah, go. I mean, listen, buddy, just hit X on the window and you're out of it. Not that hard. All right, BYU-Iowa State's on the list. I don't even know why it's here. But
Big 12 after dark.
We got 2 5-4 teams here fighting for bowl eligibility, but they could be. BYU could be the first Big 12 newcomer to make a bowl game, I guess. Who do you guys got?
BYU's my upset special on my picks this week. I I think Iowa State has, done a very admirable job getting to 5-4, given all the players they lost. But they're going to Provo for this strange late night game. BYU hasn't been good on the road. They've actually been terrible on the road, but they've been fine at home. So 7.5 seems like I don't know why they're a 7-point underdog to Iowa State. I really don't.
I'm going to go with Iowa State here. Just because I think Iowa State, if we're ranking competency right now, Iowa State does not have the dudes, but they look like they've got it together. They've won some ball games this year. Give me Iowa State. I will lay the points on the road.
Are you suggesting that Kalani Sitake is incompetent?
No, but his team has not looked great multiple times this year. They have gotten their butts kicked more times than I would like to see a BYU team get their butts kicked.
The best comment that's been left in our live stream so far is, FYI, salmonella does exist in beef. So be sure to not leave it underneath your center console for too long. I was kind of rude about this game, and I don't know why. Iowa State has done a tremendous job. Their coaching staff keeping their team together, and they deserve props for that. And also BYU. If you want some props, if I could go to any stadium in college football and cover a game that I've never been to before, BYU would be my pick. I've always wanted to see how beautiful the mountains are over your stadium.
Beautiful. It is.
Disrespectful to Colorado, Ari. Stands are coming. The Dion stands are coming for you, Ari.
I'm going to just take the points here because I don't know. Like Stu said, it seems like a bigger spread than it should be. Lastly,
speaking of the Buffs,
I feel like Lee Corso.
Ari, did you read the story this week that basically the University of Arizona is broke? The president went in front
Is that why they keep calling me for money every week?
The president went in front of the Board of Regents. I'm not kidding. The president went in front of the Board of Regents and said something to the effect of basically they miscalculated something, or they I don't know if their investments went wrong, but we thought we had 200 days of cash on hand, but it turns out we have 7. So we need help.
All of a sudden, the Big Macs in the student union are $12 instead of $6.
Never underestimate the economics of higher education. There's so much money coming in, and it is so poorly managed almost everywhere. It's
so
insane.
the one thing that I will say is, and I don't know if this is going to make people upset because I cover college football, but I actually think that just college in general is the biggest financial grift in our country. It's the way that they take advantage of people and how much books cost.
It used to be. It's leaning that way now.
It's just come on. There's a John Mulaney bit, and I don't know if you like his stand-up comedy, but it was just why is college calling me 20 years later for money? I gave you the money. I got the diploma.
And then
I'm not paying more. Yeah.
And then what are you doing with the tuition dollar? Why do you need my money? You already charged these students, some insane amount of thank you.
Yeah. How are these colleges getting by when it was
Arizona's 250 million short?
Yeah.
Well,
that's all?
Every course has to add a new book, and they should be there by the end of the week. But that said, welcome to the Fishbowl, guys. Feeling the fever. We're in the top 25 for the first time in, I think, the entire playoff era. Really? 6-3 on the road at Colorado. Colorado's last win was against ASU on October 7th. And
did you say they're ranked for the first time in the playoff era?
I can't remember when they were.
They went to the Fiesta Bowl their first year.
Well, I think that was, what year was that?
That was the first year of the CFP.
Was that the Kadeem
I thought that was
year?
pre-CFP.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they haven't been ranked since, but that first year they were.
Wouldn't it be crazy, just speaking of the deficit that we were talking about financially, what if Texas A&M and Arizona made a trade? A&M will give you the Jimbo money buyout, ship them to Tucson, get the team out of the financial turmoil. They get Jed Fish back, and everybody wins. That way, Jimbo has to keep working for his $65 million.
That's amazing. This Arizona is where failed A&M coaches go to die.
I mean, they already tried it. They tried it once. It didn't work out, but
it didn't go well.
But hey, if Jimbo can recruit, that's the one thing that Arizona hasn't had, and it is pretty crazy to me that Jed Fish comes into Arizona, actually shows some pride in the talent accumulation phase, brings in some good players, and now T-Mac is going to be a first-round draft pick, and all of a sudden they're winning more games. It's there is a direct correlation between how good the players are and how well your team performs. So I don't
Is
know.
there
You're
like
the
a
Colorado
phrase
guy.
that can describe some of that, or we should come up with something, Ari?
Yeah, I don't want to upset anybody from saying air is crucial to life. But do you think that Colorado is going to figure it out here, Dave, on a serious note, or do you think that we're on a free fall mode here?
I've talked to some people around Colorado this week. Like, the OC thing is just weird. It's weird. I think they're still invested. Deion's guys have not let go of the rope. They're they're still committed, and I think that there's something to be said for that in the middle of all this losing. But I mean, we said it on the show Friday, Ari, like hiring, or asking Pat Shurmur to run an offense that he doesn't have much of a grasp of because he hasn't been around it, but like 3 months doesn't really make sense. And Sean Lewis is, playing a good soldier at this point, but it seems unlikely he'll be there. Arizona's a good team, and Colorado's been pretty tough at home. So I don't feel super confident about this, but I think Arizona can score a bunch of points, and they've got Jacob Cowing and Tetaroa McMillan. There's only one Travis Hunter ready to cover, and Colorado does not have great corners. I don't think they're going to be able to score too many in this game. So give me Arizona. I'll lay the point.
I hope that all the Colorado people who are watching their games just for the Deion factor watch T-Mac play, because he is a tremendously really good receiver. And he had one catch when I was watching it last week, and it was just like an Odell Beckham catch almost, where it was just like, he is something. But Arizona laying 2 scores is just always a funny thought process to me. I kind of like them here in this spot, but it does feel weird to me. Stu, where do you land on this one?
I mean, I might end up looking like a complete idiot, but I feel like Colorado's got to have one last gasp left in them. And Arizona obviously has been on fire. Arizona has played 5 straight games against top 25 teams. Like, you getting up for that week after week after week has got to catch up to them at some point. So I feel like there's an upset possibility here for the Buffs at home. Yes, you're right. My trap game.
Interesting. Also,
they are your trap game.
Underrated storyline. Montana Lamonius Craig, one of the few post-spring game guys who left on his own volition, transferred to Arizona from Colorado. He's a star of the spring game, had a 98-yard touchdown, 160-something yards in that game. Hadn't done a ton for Arizona, 20 catches, 180-something yards, but it's interesting.
Well, Arizona started the year with Jaden Delora at quarterback, and now might have found the future of their program. And Noah Fafita, he's really, really good, and he's a freshman.
One of the most fun names to say in the country, also.
Noah Fafita, say it 4 fast.
Noah Fafita. Noah Fafita. Noah Fafita. I'm going to teach my daughter to say that. She would love saying Noah Fafita.
You couldn't make it to 4. Stu, you try, but only say Fafita.
Fafita. I mean, this is not as challenging as,
Fafita. Yeah, it's not
Uiagalelei. Like this or when Tagovailoa first became,
I just hope that
that
Noah Fafita is still on the team next year. I hope he doesn't play for USC or Alabama or one of these other teams.
Sounds like they got to get those games up.
Sounds like you got to get that NIL money,
Yeah. He said that he was loyal to Jed Fish, and I hope that's the case, because I don't want to live in a world, and it's probably already happening, where teams like Arizona, it already happened with Dorian Singer, like have good recruiting discoveries and do a good job of developing somebody, and then all you're doing is just developing it for the good program down the road. But we'll see how that goes. And lastly, we already got through most of these, and then we're going to let Stu go. You good, Stu?
I'm good.
Okay. Superlative picks. Locks of the week. Mine was Nebraska plus 2.5. Stu had Oregon minus 15.5. David, what was yours?
My lock of the week?
Yeah.
My lock is Texas State and Coastal Carolina over 58. Shout out to GJ Kinney. Jumped in the river after the game along with the university president. Texas State has been one of the best stories in college football this year. But if you watch their games, every game is like 51-38. It is fantastic football. Football on ESPN Plus if you get a chance. But Texas State and Coastal this week over 58. There are still some remnants of the Jamie Chadwell offense at Coastal that Tim Beck is running. It's not great, but they can score. They can score.
It seems like they dug themselves in a hole early, but they're playing a lot better now. Coastal.
It doesn't sound like Grayson McCall is going to play, but they've done well without him.
Stu's got some nuts in the oven, so we got to hurry this up here. We have the same trap game, Stu. So why don't you explain it for everyone?
Well, it was Arizona, Colorado, right?
No, Ari, we both have the same.
Oh, me and you do. Okay, yeah,
we do.
It's like really right there.
There's a real chance for Oklahoma State to put their nuts in the oven here in this game. You're going down to the bounce house. Obviously, you're coming off of the Oklahoma win last week and all that was invested into that and all that. But like the other side of this is UCF has been a lot more sound since they got John Rice Plumlee back. They're pretty dangerous, and I think Oklahoma State can score enough to win this game, but. Man, you're on the road in conference, and you got a team that really needs a win, really wants to win, and has the bodies to do it. It's getting healthier. Careful, pokes. Careful.
Just be careful. It's an emotional. Well, first of all, the spread is 3, so
yeah.
It's
careful.
Yeah, it's going to be tough sledding, I think. Okay. My Sickos game of the week involves Iowa and Rutgers. I don't know if that needs to be explained. Rutgers is a much better football team than they've been in the past, but if you're not gambling on this game, why are you watching it?
28.5, Ari. 28.5. It feels like, that episode of Seinfeld where Kramer drives the test drive and they go past the E. It feels like with the Iowa offense, we're just in the front seat, just putting our hands together and mashing the gas pedal and seeing how far we can go. I mean, can we get under 25?
Do you know I live bet the game last week at halftime under 14.5 because I wanted to see if I could win a game total at 14.5. And I lost, but I shouldn't have lost. Like I was there with a few minutes left. But yeah, 28.5. I don't know. Rutgers has some guys on. I don't know. Yeah, under seems like the play here, huh?
Yeah, I mean like Vegas just can't bring themselves, like they keep nudging it down a little bit, and they can't just bring themselves to be like, you know what, it's 18.5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody keeps saying, look how low the under is every single week, and it keeps hitting every week.
Yeah,
it hits every week.
That's the funniest part about it.
Yeah, it's not going over.
Yeah.
But Rutgers has some life to it.
But they live off of their defense in a lot of ways. And Gavin Wimsatt, I like him, but I don't like him against Iowa's defense. Look for Iowa's defense to put some points on the board in this game.
Stu, you got anything else you want to talk about before you go?
I believe I'm supposed to share my Sickos game of the week.
Oh yeah. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that Maryland-Nebraska game we were talking about, where Maryland has been just going the complete wrong direction. Syracuse, very similar. Haven't won since I don't even remember when, and Pitt's just been bad all year. So this is like, and it's at Yankee Stadium. So
is it really? Can we stop this? What is the Northeast wanting to play
done
games?
with the baseball game.
Did you like in the Northwestern Iowa game last week that they had to take like a 10-minute stoppage twice in the fourth quarter to fix like a sinkhole in the middle of the field?
It was after they tried a failed tush push.
Stuff happens like that too in like the bowl games are played in the baseball stadiums. Like there's this, they're trying to send this message like, it's very fun, it's novel. You probably shouldn't be doing this. And we keep doing
I've got a good idea. We should be playing football games on battleships.
I'd watch.
Also, they tried to play a college basketball game on a battleship. Michigan State was in it. I don't remember what year. And
there's too much dew on the court.
There's so much dew they had to cancel it.
To be fair, not to wish injury, but if they had kept playing it, tell me you could have not watched that. I would watch every second.
Oh, it was great to watch. It was just
they played on a soaking wet basketball.
I want to watch college basketball with double rims. That's what I want to watch.
Like on a street court.
Yeah. Yeah. So I dare people to watch all 3.5 hours of this.
Isn't Northwestern going to be playing a ton of games in November the next few years in Wrigley Field because of their stadium renovations?
They've got to deal with Wrigley. Like I think they're going to be playing every other year in Wrigley Field, regardless of the stadium renovation. There's still the stadium renovation. I mean, there was a city council meeting recently. Like they haven't actually gotten it approved yet. And,
okay.
I thought Evanston residents are furious, and they had a marathon city council meeting recently about this, and people got into a fist fight.
Oh,
it's not exactly, if they were trying to build a new stadium in Tuscaloosa, it would probably go a lot smoother than this.
Right.
Do people like these Wrigley games? Why do they keep doing them? I don't get it.
You know who they're good for? Iowa fans. Like that was like 80%
Yeah.
Iowa fans in that game.
Yeah. Well,
All right,
It was
Stu.
cool. It was cool the first time. I remember game day came.
yeah.
Now remember that was the one where they figured out the last second, like they didn't have enough room behind one of the end zones. So the teams
somebody
went in the
almost
same
broke their
direction.
neck as he fractured his skull hitting the
it's
brick
cool. It's one
wall.
of those things that's cool to do once, and then maybe we
Yeah.
use these stadiums that we only get to use 7 times a year on our campuses. Maybe use them.
Next week we got to come up with like new concepts of like where could they play. I was watching Friday Night Lights, and because that's the thing I'm watching right now before I go to bed. I'm rewatching Friday Night Lights, the show.
Cow pasture game.
We're on the episode of the cow pasture game where he's trying to set that up and all that.
Well, my idea for a long time that I pitched, and I did get a chance to pitch this in person to Crystal Connie and Ross Bjork in Destin, but the first Texas A&M game played at Texas Motor Speedway in front of 250,000 people. I recognize it's a terrible idea, but I want to see it just for the spectacle. I told them about it in Destin at SEC meetings, and unfortunately, they did say they'd both get fired.
Why is it a terrible idea?
Because it's a terrible viewing experience.
Tennessee played a game at.
But even that was bad. But Bristol is a really, really small NASCAR track. I know you're a huge NASCAR head, Stu.
You a big NASCAR guy?
I don't know anything about any of this. So
Bristol is a very small track.
Different.
It's like the biggest. It's like the biggest.
Okay.
Are you a NASCAR person?
Me?
Who, me?
Yeah.
David.
No.
I know you're not, Stu. I don't need to ask you. I was just asking David.
I'm not. But I know enough about college football, NASCAR. No, I don't.
Why don't they play a football game on the Las Vegas Strip where they're setting up this F1 race?
Yeah, I'd watch.
I don't know how they're going to race cars on the Las Vegas Boulevard, but I'm very curious about that.
Why don't they do like the baseball Field of Dreams thing? Like just build a field in the middle of a cornfield somewhere and have a college football game.
I'm into that. But no, playing at Texas Motor Speedway would be awesome for a spectacle and terrible for the 280,000 people that would buy tickets to it. So,
Stu, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. It was an hour and 15 minutes. We went a little bit longer than we usually do, but
I'm honored. This is my first appearance on the show. I'm honored.
Yeah.
Am
I banned from the Audible?
You always keep saying that, but I feel like you've been on like 7 times in the last year.
No, not since I haven't been on at all in the last year. And Bruce keeps telling me that you were the reason I'm banned. That it was. And I
keep telling you, Bruce was the reason you were banned.
Yeah, got a weird thing going on.
That's a good strategy they got going on. I need to take some notes on
this. Yeah,
it's an earworm. It gets stuck in your
head. It is. Thank you guys so much for listening to the latest edition of Until Saturday, our Picks Edition show. Be sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll be notified when new episodes are up. We always appreciate a 5-star review and a rating. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel to join us every Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday for our live streams. And also be sure to subscribe to the podcast channel to listen to us in your car or on your run or whatever it is that you're doing in your day. The next time we talk will be Saturday night for the reaction podcast and live stream. It might be a little bit later this week because I'm covering a night game, and that always gets a little bit tough. I'll be at the Texas TCU game, which I think is going to be exciting. Quinn Ewers seems to be back. That's going to be fun. And, as we talk about the college football playoff, I've also realized that we haven't really spent enough time talking about Texas as a team that, is right in the thick of things there. So we'll get into that after I cover the game on Saturday. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to Stew Mandel for joining us. Have a really good lunch today. I know you're looking forward to it. And Dave, we'll talk to you on Saturday.
Thank you.